Homage to the Triple Gem. So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at Kuti in Talawatugoda, and this kuti is actually the most beautiful kuti I think I've seen in Colombo, and one of the most well constructed that I've best designed, best balanced design that I think I've stayed in. So I was asked the other day about nimittas, and specifically there's a phrase in the suttas called the citta nimitta. It's in a sutta called the Suddha Sutta, which means the simile of the cook. And we've talked a bit about that sutta before. There's also another way that the word nimitta is used commonly, especially in the commentaries coming from the Visuddhimagga, coming from the Atthakatha possibly, these kind of commentaries that came later. They define nimitta as like this very vivid mental image. So in the Suddha Sutta, the simile of the cook, the Buddha gives a simile of a cook, which again we've gone over several times, but go over it again, in which a cook sets out a number of different curries. So here in Sri Lanka, in South Asia, they put various like curries. They're kind of little bit liquidy dishes sometimes, or like savory dishes with a lot of sauce. And then you'll have rice, and you'll put these curries on the rice, and the rice will absorb the flavor. So the wise cook watches what curries his employer takes, his master takes, and whatever he takes, he gives more of that particular curry the following day. So because he's good at doing this, the master likes him and thinks, oh, he's a good cook, and he rewards him with wages. And so the Buddha says in a similar way, a monk who knows the citta nimitta, which basically means like the theme of the mind, gets rewarded with a pleasant abiding here and now. So the Buddha was the master of similes. The similes brilliant. And this particular simile has a lot of layers in which it can overlap in the way that a person directs their mind. So one of them is that, there can be this kind of intellectual understanding of what kinds of food a person likes, but there is a very strong intuitive component. I mean, especially if one, say, goes to a new culture. I've been in Sri Lanka for about 5 years now. But if one goes to a brand new culture and doesn't know what any of the dishes are, doesn't even know what the spices are maybe that are going into them, then one will have to use a little bit more intuition to determine what's good or what's bad. I mean, maybe sometimes sampling a little bit. And it won't necessarily be some kind of totally intellectual thing that one knows all of the ingredients that are going in, one knows the kind of chemical reactions between the ingredients, and one has some kind of chart drawn up, what kind of particular chemical reactions will be good for one's body or bad. It doesn't necessarily work that way. So when one goes to try out food in a new culture, a new country, one goes and takes the food and eats it, and it's a complete experience. One has an intuitive sense whether the food tastes good, sometimes whether the food is good for one's body, whether one should keep eating it. And the more that one pays attention to what kinds of food are good or bad for the body, the more refined that skill becomes. The easier it becomes for a person to do that with more refinement in the future, to assess more quickly whether or not particular types of food are good or bad, and to know why. So in a similar way, when one has not done much experimenting, much practicing with meditation, or even as one goes along, it's not always the case that one can have a kind of totally well laid out intellectual plan for what kind of meditation topic one's going to take up, how one's going to meditate, or how one's meditation should progress. A lot of that can just be intuitive. It can be somewhat non-intellectual. One takes up a particular way of meditating, a particular topic of meditation, and it feels good. It just feels right. It feels like something wholesome. Another way that one can tell this kind of theme of the mind, if one is taking up the right theme of the mind, if one is eating the right kind of food for the mind, is if one has a kind of illness. Actually, food in some Asian cultures, even I think in North American native cultures, is considered like a medicine. So the types of food that you eat are medicines for the body. They are used to cure particular ailments. So in a similar way, the different types of meditation topics are used to cure particular illnesses in the mind. So one sometimes chooses a meditation topic that is conducive, that feels good, that's that's something that's going very well. And then one does that for a period of time, keeps meditating, but one notices as one continues meditating with this topic, there's negative things that are coming into the mind and one is not able to stop them, or one is trying to stop them, but it's just not successful. That could be a sign that it's, as those things build up, there can be a tipping point where it's, okay, now it's time to change meditation topics. So this is another way that one can determine the theme of the mind, is if a particular type of meditation counters an illness in the mind. And again, this is something somewhat intuitive. I mean, one may like to do the other type of meditation more, but what's required at this time is this type of meditation, this topic, to counter this illness that's arisen in the mind. So one can change topics in that way, but another way that one can approach this citta nimitta, this theme of the mind, is that particular dishes of food can sometimes be prepared in different ways. And for example, there's so many ways to prepare like beef. I mean, you can have like a beef steak, or, like stir-fried beef, beef sandwich, hamburger. So all these different ways that a person can prepare beef. And depending on how that's prepared, it may have a different effect on the body. And so in a similar way, the ways that a person approaches a particular topic of meditation can vary. There's different ways to approach breath meditation. There's different ways to approach metta meditation. There's different ways to approach asubha meditation. And so one also has to become sensitive to which particular way of doing this meditation feels right, feels good. Another way in which these types of meditation overlap with the simile of food is that in terms of making the body feel good, making the mind feel good, there are some types of food that are like staples. There are some that are kind of a little bit more specialized. For some people in some cultures, the staples change, but generally say a staple would be like rice. A staple in Western cultures is like wheat or bread. And in a similar way, actually breath meditation can be like a staple meditation. It's a meditation that can be used for many things. It's just good for many things. And it's pretty safe. It's hard to go off with that type of meditation. Asubha meditation is also one that's highly recommended in the canon. It's actually what monks are taught at their ordination. So it's the first meditation topic officially that a monk gets taught, one could say. Asubha, however, is one that's a dish that has to be prepared well. Otherwise, it can go bad. It can cause problems for the mind. So, in choosing this topic, one, through experimentation, learns these various aspects of meditation, learns these various aspects of the topics of meditation, which ones are good in general, which ones are particularly good for one, and which ones can be used to counter defilements that are particular to one's personality, that keep coming up again and again. So, this is actually the most important meaning of the word citta nimitta. I mean, there's more ways one could look at it. It essentially means taking up a topic for the mind, taking up a way of directing one's attention in the mind that's suitable, that's appropriate, that's a good theme for the mind. And so that could take many forms, but classically, one could classically conceive of it as being directed to the meditation topics. This second way of conceiving of nimitta, that comes post-canon. So it's in primarily the Visuddhimagga, I think, is where it probably gets its big push, its big start. And it might also be in the Atthakatha, these kind of commentaries as well. So in the later commentarial literature, and also in the experiences of meditators, there's these visions that can arise in a person's meditation. You can have, if a person is doing breath meditation, they might get an image of a ball of light. If a person is doing sometimes breath, maybe other meditation, asubha meditation, an image of a corpse might arise. And these can also be appropriate topics for the mind, appropriate things to take up in one's meditation. And classically, as at least one prominent teacher describes, entering into this light nimitta and being absorbed in it and entering into a very deep state of jhana. Some may say that's appropriate, some not. There's others who have these very vivid images of corpses that they then use to develop this passion for their body, for other people's bodies. So this very vivid image is the commentarial way of referring to nimitta, but it can overlap with that citta nimitta that the Buddha talks about. However, nimitta in and of itself, like seeing an image or a sign, sometimes that gets taken too far. And it's like, for you to progress in meditation, you should have this nimitta. You should have this sign of a corpse or a ball of light or whatever nimitta, whatever image they might recommend or say that is a definite sign of progress. The thing with people is that people generally can be divided into two categories. We can say in this instance, people who get visions and people who don't. People who get visions, they may not be able to actually feel their body when they're meditating, or feel like the breath energy in their body, or have a sense of what's going on in the body, but they have these vivid visions. Their mind throws up information, a representation of information as a vision. And so they can get visions of various things. They can get visions of outside things, outside events, and outside people. The second type of person doesn't get any visions, but their mind is more anchored in their body. Their awareness tends to go through the body, and they perceive things through the lens of the body. It's kind of, if they feel anger, if they feel whatever it is, it'll be felt in the body rather than something coming up as an image or information about whether the meditation is going well. Might be felt as openness or closeness in the body in certain cases, rather than, say, an image that might come up or something like this. So that type of person will not necessarily get these image nimittas. But still, following meditation in the ways that we've been talking about is a citta nimitta. It's a sign of the mind. It's a way they can move forward in an appropriate way. So it's important to know the difference between these. The later commentarial literature describes nimittas as this image, this vision, and the previous, the suttas describe the citta nimitta as a theme of the mind, something appropriate that one takes up in order to advance in one's meditation practice. So obviously the first one is more important. So long as one is taking up a topic that feels good, that's good food for the mind, one is directing one's attention in that way, then one is developing on the path towards nibbana. And whether one sees a light, whether one sees a corpse or not, is not so important. The most important thing is the development of the mind, the elimination of bad qualities, and the cultivation of good ones, and the purification of the mind to find a happiness that doesn't change.